Hi guys, and welcome back to Logical Redstone Reloaded. Last episode we talked about Boolean algebra and logic gates. Today we're going to use those logic gates to build a binary adder. Like I said last time, if you haven't learned binary by now, you're really going to want to. There are a ton of resources in the description to do so, including episode 2 of this series. So without further ado, let's get started. First, let's define what the term binary adder means. A binary adder is a circuit that takes two binary numbers as input and outputs their sum. For example, if I input 110 or 6 and 100 or 4, 6 plus 4 is 10. 1010. So how do you even approach something like this? Well, I think the first step is to get super comfortable with binary addition on paper. We need to break down exactly what happens when two binary numbers get added together. To do that, let's first remind ourselves how to add numbers in decimal. To add two numbers together, you add the digits of each column together starting from the right. For example, if I have 43 plus 89, the first thing I do is 3 plus 9, which is 12. So mark a 2 here and carry the 10 to the next digit. Then we do 1 plus 4 plus 8, which is 13. So mark a 3 and carry a 10 to the next digit again. But there are no more digits to add it to, only these invisible zeros. So the carry can be directly written to the answer, giving us a final sum of 132. Okay, easy enough. Now let's apply that same concept to binary addition. Let's do 5 plus 9, 101 plus 1001. Just like decimal, we go column by column, starting from the right. For the first column, we have 1 plus 1, which is 2. But 2 in binary already takes up two digits, it's 10. So let's mark a 0 and carry over the 1 to the next column. Remember, the next column is twice as valuable, so this carried 1 is essentially worth 2 instead of 10. Now to add up the next column, we just do 1 plus 0, which is 1. Next, 1 plus 0 is also 1. And finally, 0 plus 1 is 1. So 5 plus 9 is 1110, or 14. Let's do one more example. This time I have 7 plus 6. 1 plus 0 is 1. 1 plus 1 is 2, so mark a 0 and carry. And 1 plus 1 is 3. 3 in binary is 1, 1, so let's mark a 1 and carry. But once again, we're carrying two invisible zeros, so we can just write it on the output. So 7 plus 6 is 1101, or 13. Perfect. So that's how binary addition works. As you can see, it's pretty similar to decimal addition. If you want more practice with binary addition, check out this video in the description. It has great walkthroughs of more examples. Now let's make a binary adder. To keep things simple, let's start with the simplest possible adding circuit, a circuit that just takes two binary bits, A and B, and outputs a single bit for their sum. We have 4 cases for A and B. The first 3 cases are 0 plus 0 equals 0, 0 plus 1 equals 1, and 1 plus 0 equals 1. In other words, the truth table with A, B, and sum looks like this. Now the fourth case is a special one. 1 plus 1 is 2, but as I showed earlier, this means the output is 0, and we carry over to the next column. So in our truth table, the sum for 1 plus 1 is 0, but that's only part of the story. We need another output bit for the carry. This new carry bit is 1 only when the input is 1 plus 1. Let's also add that output to our little diagram, and now this is the finished truth table for our adder. So to implement this with Redstone, which logic gates are going to be the most useful? Does the output for the carry or for the sum remind you of any logic gates in particular? As it turns out, the carry can be made with an AND gate, and the sum can be made with an XOR gate. The truth tables for these gates match exactly what we want. So let's grab those gates and make this with Redstone. Alright, here it is. As you can see, we have an XOR gate for the sum and an AND gate for the carry, and both inputs are just kind of going into both of them. In digital logic, this circuit is called a half adder. A half adder takes in two bits and adds them together, giving a sum and a carry. Just for good measure, let's test out the half adder and make sure it works. 1 plus 0 is 1, 0 plus 1 is also 1, and 1 plus 1 is 2. Perfect. Okay, so now we can add 1 plus 1, but what if we want to add bigger binary numbers together? For that, it's going to get a little more complicated. But I think a good starting place would be to analyze exactly what happens in a column of binary addition. At any individual column, there are essentially 3 bits that you're adding up. The top bit, the bottom bit, and the carry coming in from the previous column if there was one. I'll call these 3 bits A, B, and carry in. For example, on this column, A is 0, B is 0, and the carry in is 1. But on this other column, A is 1, B is 0, and carry in is 0. Once you add up these 3 bits, you essentially produce 2 output bits. The sum, which is part of the final answer, and sometimes a carry going out to the next column. I'll call these output bits the sum and the carry out. So if we could make a circuit that adds 3 bits together and produces a sum and a carry, or, the 2-bit result, we could simulate a column of binary addition. But the question is, how? Well, remember, we have a half adder, and a half adder can add 2 bits together. So if we want to add 3 bits, we can simply do 2 additions. For example, if you have 1 plus 2 plus 3, you're adding 3 numbers, but it's not being done directly. First, you add the 1 to the 2, then you add the result of that to the 3. Notice how you just added 3 numbers using only operations that add 2 numbers at a time. Transposing to circuits, we can have a half adder that adds the first 2 bits, and then have another half adder that adds the sum of that with the 3rd bit, and the final sum is output right here. This nearly works. The only problem with this is that you might get a carry from the first half adder or from the second one, but that can be fixed with a simple OR gate. And now, this circuit is called a full adder. A full adder takes in 3 bits and adds them together, giving a sum and a carry. That's exactly what we need for a column of binary addition. And if you're interested in the truth table for a full adder, here's what that looks like. There are 8 cases for the 3 inputs, A, B, and carry in, and the output is the result of adding the 3 bits together. For example, on this row, we have 1 plus 0 plus 1, so the full adder produces 2. A carry and no sum, which by the way corresponds to this case during binary addition. Now, of course, this is not the only way to make a full adder. All that matters in the definition of a full adder is that it matches this truth table. However you want to implement it is up to you, but doing it like this with the 2 half adders makes the most sense to me. But anyways, let's test this out. If we input a single bit, no matter where it is, we should get just a sum. If we put in any combination of 2 bits, we get a carry, and all 3 bits gives a carry and a sum. Beautiful. And of course, if you're making one yourself, I recommend checking all 8 cases before using it. Okay, now using this full adder, we can construct a multi-bit binary adder. To do that, let's reorient the inputs and outputs to look like this. You'll see why in a minute. A and B are on the bottom, the sum is on the top, the carry in is on the right, and the carry out is on the left. Also, now that we know how it behaves, let's transfer to a more compact version to save some space. This is a super small design for a full adder that's been around for a long time. If you want to look at it more closely, the world download is in the description, but it really implements the exact same logic that I've drawn out here. We still have the exact same inputs and outputs, A, B, carry in, carry out, and sum. Now, notice how during addition, the carry out of one column becomes the carry in of the next one. So, to mimic this with redstone, let's chain full adders together like this, plugging the carry out of each one into the carry in of the next one. And now, this is a binary adder. Specifically, it's a 4-bit binary adder. By using a chain of 4 full adders, we can now add any 2 4-bit binary numbers together. The first input to the adder consists of the 4 A bits, the second input consists of the 4 B bits, and the output is made up of the 4 sum bits. Let's go ahead and try it out. 5 plus 9 gives us 14. Nice. And 7 plus 6 gives us 13. Beautiful. This type of adder is called a ripple carry adder because, as it's calculating, the carries ripple across the adder. Now, because of the nature of these full adders, we still have a dangling carry in on the first one and a carry out on the last one. So what do we do with those? Well, this carry in is representing a carry on the very first column, which of course never happens on paper. But if it did happen, it would just be worth 1, right? I mean, we're just adding another 1 to the first column. For example, if I add 5 plus 9 plus 1, we get 15. If we get a carry out, that means that the final column carried over, in which case it gets written directly on the output. So if you want, you can wire the carry out to be part of the answer. Now if we input large numbers like 11 plus 14, the output is 25, 11001. Notice how the carry out is the 5th bit of the answer. And in general, adding 2 n-bit numbers produces a number up to n plus 1 bits long. The plus 1 is because of that final carryout. Okay, so we just made a 4-bit ripple carry adder, or RCA for short. Using this technique of chaining full adders together, you can make an adder as big as you want. For example, this is what a 32-bit RCA looks like. I really like RCAs because they're the easiest and most straightforward type of adder to understand. However, they have a fatal flaw that makes them very unlikable in digital logic. As an RCA gets bigger, it takes longer and longer, on average, to produce the answer. The carries have to take more time to propagate across all the full adders. For example, if you add this huge number with just one more 1, yeah, it's gonna take a while. It would be really cool to have a synchronous adder, or an adder that takes the same amount of time to compute no matter what you input. A well-known type of synchronous adder is called a carry look-ahead adder, or CLA. These are used in real electronics as a faster type of adder. A CLA essentially adds more logic in the back of the adder to compute the carries all at once. Of course, that's a big simplification, and if you want to learn more about how CLAs work, check out these videos in the description. They're actually really interesting. However, I'm not going to build a CLA with redstone. Instead, I'm going to dive into the world of redstone-specific synchronous adders. You see, over the years, the logical redstone community has developed some really clever types of adders that abuse the weird quirks of redstone. These adders are not replicable in real life. They don't actually exist anywhere outside of Minecraft. So let's briefly go over a few of these redstone-specific adders, and then I'll go over my favorite one in more detail. First, we have the carry look everywhere adder. These adders were really common in the early days of logical redstone, being first popularized by a YouTuber named Nuomaster. This is an 8-bit carry look everywhere adder, and it has a speed of 4 ticks, meaning that no matter what inputs I give it, the output will always arrive exactly 4 ticks later, completely synchronized. The redstone mechanic being abused here is glass towers. These glass towers are used to combine carry signals from multiple places at once, and to control how far they propagate. I'm not an expert on this type of adder, so I'm not going to go into any more detail, but you can play around with it yourself in the world download. The inputs and outputs are diagonal, which is kind of weird, but let's go ahead and see what it looks like to add 5 plus 3. The 5 goes here, the 3 goes here, and we get 8. 1, 0, 0, 0. Another type of redstone-specific adder is called an instant carry adder. These were also really common in the early days. This is an 8-bit instant carry adder made by Q2CK. It has a speed of 4 ticks, and this time the inputs and outputs are horizontal. The redstone mechanic being abused here is pistons blocking signals. For example, let's say I have a setup like this, where a carry is coming in from the right, and I want to control how far it propagates. If I lift this piston, it instantly travels to the rest of the outputs. But if I want to stop the propagation at a certain point, I can just block it off, stopping it from reaching any future outputs. Again, this is a huge simplification because I'm not an expert on this type of adder either. Once again, let's add the classic 5 plus 3, and we get 8. Okay, so both of these are great, and at one time, these adders, along with a few other types, were pretty common. But in 2015, a revolutionary new type of redstone adder was invented by magical gentlemen called the carry cancel adder, or CCA. And even today, CCAs are still one of the most common adders to use in logical redstone. Here's an example of what a CCA might look like. The cool thing about CCAs is that they're vertical, which makes them easier to work with and feel more compact. And they're completely pistonless, unlike the instant carry adder, and that removes any chance of weird timings. As you can see, if I add 7 plus 1, we get an 8, completely synchronized. I use CCAs for everything now, and a lot of people view them as the holy grail of redstone adders. So let's dive into how they work. Just like most fast adders, the first thing a CCA does is it computes all the carries at once. What I mean by that is it calculates all the little numbers that you would write above the columns during an addition problem. For example, let's say I have 5 plus 3. Definitely haven't used these numbers in this video yet. If you go ahead and add these the normal way, then after you're done, you had to carry a 1 3 times. Here, here, and here. Since you didn't carry to any other columns, let's mark those with zeros. So when I say the carries, I'm referring to this top row. Now, like I said, a CCA computes all the carries first, and I'll explain how it does that in just a bit. What's more important to understand here is that if you are somehow magically given these carries, the rest of the addition problem is really fast for a circuit to compute. This is because you don't have to start at the rightmost column anymore. If you're already given the carries, you can calculate the sum for every column all at once. In other words, the problem is parallelizable. There's no more dependencies between the columns. If we go back to the full adder and look at how the sum is calculated, we can see that it's calculated by taking A XOR B XOR C, which is the same thing as just adding 3 bits together and only looking at the rightmost bit. Therefore, if we apply A XOR B XOR C to each column, we get our final answer. We didn't even have to think about carrying or anything. The carries were already given. For example, in this first column, we have 0 XOR 1 XOR 1, which is 0. So clearly, if you want to make a fast adder, all of your energy should be devoted to just figuring out what those carries are. And that's really what these redstone-specific adders work so hard to do. They all use some special trick to generate the carries. Alright, so how exactly does a CCA figure out those carries? A CCA generates the carries by a process called carry cancel. That's why it's in the name. Let me show you how that process works. Let's say we want to generate the carries for 5 plus 3. Anytime you see a column with 2 ones, you know for sure that it's going to create a carry. So, create a signal of 1s going to the left forever, called a carry signal. Then, anytime you see a column with 2 zeros, you know that the carry will not be able to continue. So, create a signal of 0s going to the left forever, called the cancel signal, which trumps any previous carry signals. Now, if you get another carry signal later, it creates 1s again, because carries have priority over previous cancel signals. But of course, eventually, you'll hit another 0, 0, which, once again, cancels it forever. After this process, you're left with a string of 1s and 0s. Amazingly, this string is the carries. It's just shifted over by 1. So, yeah, that's how a CCA works. It runs the carry cancel process to generate all the carries, and then computes A XOR B XOR C on each column at the same time to get the sums. Pretty cool, right? At this point, if you want to just download the world and use the CCA, feel free. I totally respect that. But for the people that want a greater understanding, let's go over how all the redstone of a CCA works. It's actually really clever. First, the carry cancel process. This is done using 2 glass towers with comparators on subtract mode. The tower in the back is for the carry signals, and the one in the side is for the cancel signals. As you can see, if we get a carry signal, it travels up forever, but not down, because that's how glass towers work. Since this is a vertical adder, that's the same thing as traveling left, but not right, on paper. And if we get a cancel signal later on, it cancels it forever. This is because at every layer, the side has a higher signal strength than the back, which means all the comparators on subtract mode will output 0. Then if we get another carry signal later, it's able to generate again because all the signal strengths are higher than the cancel below it. But if you get another cancel, of course, it cancels it forever. One thing to note here is that this only works for up to 8 bits. Beyond that, the signal strength might run out and this thing doesn't work anymore. In fact, most redstone-specific adders are only 8 bits for similar reasoning. It all comes down to signal strength. But anyways, this is really cool. By putting in the carry signals here and the cancel signals here, we can generate all the carries of the addition problem at the same time. And it only takes 1 tick to calculate, because all these comparators are working in parallel. That's why it's so fast. The next part of a CCA is these 2 input towers, A and B, and an XOR gate at every single layer. Now remember, we want a carry signal when both bits are 1, and a cancel signal when both bits are 0. For the cancel signal, we can implement it with a torch like this. This torch will only be on if both bits are 0. In other words, it's a NOR gate. Then for the carry signal, since we're detecting both bits being 1, ideally we would implement that with an AND gate. Instead though, I'm going to do something a little weird. I'm going to invert the output of this XOR to make it an XNOR instead, and use that for the carry. This is almost an AND gate, except for when both bits are 0. But when both bits are 0, we get a cancel signal anyways, so it doesn't actually matter. We're good. Okay, perfect. Real quick, let's try generating the carries. If we input 5 plus 3, the carry signals are 1, 1, 1. That is perfect. The last thing to do is, for each bit, compute A XOR B XOR C. We already have an XOR gate in the back, so we can just grab A XOR B from right here. Then, let's make another XOR gate to XOR that with the corresponding carry. And that is the finished CCA adder. You can probably see why people like them so much now. They're just elegant. Oh, and by the way, just like most adders, CCAs have a carry in and a carry out. The carry in is all the way down here. It's powering the very bottom of the carry tower. And the carry out is right here. It's the highest output of the carry tower. This also means that if you want to have a CCA with more than 8 bits, you technically can. All you have to do is stack 2 8-bit modules on top of each other and connect the carry out to the next carry in. You're going to lose some speed though, and the synchronization gets all weird, so honestly, I don't recommend this unless you really know what you're doing. 8 bits is absolutely plenty for 99% of redstone applications, but it's cool that it's an option. Because of the way I built this CCA, the speed is 5 ticks, and that's plenty fast enough for me in most cases. However, just because I think it's interesting, I want to show you just how crazy optimized CCAs have become recently. This is a CCA made by my friend Don, and it's only 3 ticks. That might not seem very different from 5, but when you're using an adder over and over and over again, the time save is huge. I'm not even going to pretend to understand how this works, all I know is that a lot of really smart engineering went into making this. And here's another 3-tick CCA made by my friend Fearless. This one is special because not only is it pistonless like the other ones, it's also torchless. This has the advantage that you never have to worry about torches burning out if you're computing many additions in succession, which is attractive for something like a computer where you really want it to be 100% reliable. And finally, this is a hexadecimal CCA made by Yellow Bunny. The inputs are 2 4-digit hexadecimal numbers using signal strength, and the output is a 5-digit hex number also shown in signal strength. Great job guys, you should be proud of these, and thanks for letting me show them off. With that, I think I've covered pretty much all I know about Redstone Addition. Dude, it doesn't even fit in render distance anymore. Next episode, we'll be talking about negative numbers and how to use them. If you want to support me in these videos, subscribe, and consider checking out my Patreon page in the description. I also have a Discord server full of Redstone nerds, so come join us if that sounds interesting. I hope you learned something, I hope you enjoyed. Peace out, guys.